Good evening, everyone. Magandang gabi. My name is Ben Francia and welcome to the FlyingDonV coaching live streaming series. Okay, so we don't have a formal name yet entitled to this weekly live streaming show. Pero we're committed to do this every week so we can help everyone, not just triathletes, but everybody who's into fitness, who's anybody who is planning or would want to have this kind of kumbaga active lifestyle, especially during this time of quarantine. Again, my name is Ben Francia. Hindi po ako yung resource person for the day. I'm just your moderator and I'm quite fortunate to be part of this weekly live streaming show para I can personally ask our resource person, our resident multisport coach, si Coach Don, to answer some of the common questions that we really ask about indoor training in particular. So, guys, thank you so much for being with us for this weekend. It's a long weekend. So, I hope you guys are having a great time. If you have any questions, please post them in the comment section. Okay? Kung sino man yung nanonood right now, pakilala kayo so we can do a shout out, mention your name, and say also where you're from para we know kung saan umaabot yung live stream show natin for this afternoon. Okay, sige. So, without further ado, I'll bring into the stream na si Coach Don. All right, bro. Good evening. Evening na ba? Medyo maliwanag pa no? Okay. Naka-mute ka pa yata, bro.
Yeah. Good late afternoon.
Good afternoon, pare. Kamusta?
Okay naman. How did you enjoy our ride kanina? It was nice seeing you.
First time ko mag-join ng Zwift meetup. Okay? So it was a first experience. Kaso pare, hindi ko yata nabasa yung memo na hindi zone 1 eh. Parang basa ko yata zone 1 eh. Pero hindi ko alam kung nagmamadali everyone in the ride or talagang malakasan lang talaga yung grupo na nasabayan ko.
Mas malalakas yun talaga sina Brian, Lucas, kahit si Brian mas malakas pa yun sa akin magbike. The thing is, ganun rin naman kasi when you ride outdoors, sabihin, hindi, easy ride lang tayo, pero after nun, magbabanatan na. Hindi mo na makikita hanggang sa
yung mga lies na yan. Narinig ko yun na several times, pati yung mga sabi-sabi na, hindi, lang yan, patag lang yan.
Patag lang.
Oo.
Yung tawagan nila na bubudol.
Oo. Patag, yung pala, patagalan na akyatan.
Yung mga, actually, dati kasi nung nag-ride ako, when I started, it was around 2009, 2010. Believe it or not, yung mga group ride namin before, talagang takot na takot ako kasi kung maiwan ako, di ko alam mo saan ako pupunta. Naalala ko pa, my first long ride ever was going to Naik from, it was the house of my teammates, or it was the house of my teammate, yung starting point namin. So, it was all the way from basically Alabang to Naik. Tapos, hindi ako marunong mag-bike pa nun. So, bawat intersection, titigil ako. Tapos, nitatawid ko yung bike ko. Kasi bababa ako sa bike ko, tapos tatawid ko. And the funny thing is, sobrang bait nga ng mga teammate ko noon, sina Mikey and all. Sinasamahan ako pag bumababa ako ng bike, tapos itatawid ko. Until sooner or later, I got the hang of it na nagkaroon ako ng confidence. So it was, dati kasi, when I was starting out, sa loob lang ako ng village, nagbabike, like what I said before, wala pang masyadong information available to a lot of people about how you should be training on the bike. Mahirap mag-iya ng kasama nun kasi hindi pa ganun karami ang triathletes. So, basically what happened with when I was starting the bike, para bang pahirapan. Luckily now we have a lot more, places available where we could bike safely. Like, ano ba favorite biking place mo?
Mas malapit kasi sa akin south eh. So, Nuvali by default. Oo, pero
wala pa Nuvali.
pero nung last year, medyo mas madalas ako sa Clark kasi yung group that I joined for training, mas mas malapit lahat sila sa Clark. So kumbaga ang tawag dito, na pagkaisahan ako, hindi ko naman sila pwedeng yayain. No, south tayo eh. Lahat sila malapit sa
Oo.
north. So ako nag-adjust for them. So
Yung
yun, Clark.
ako din before, aside from the South, that for a time I was training for my first full Ironman. Every weekend, magdadrive ako to Clark. Mahal rin kasi may toll. Di ba? Magkano rin yung toll? Yung
Malayo
gas,
rin.
yung gas mo, maybe balikan would be 500. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
all the way in the north already. Di
Mm-hmm.
ba?
Quezon
North of
City.
Metro Manila o Quezon
Oo.
City na ako. So, malapit-lapit. So, easily, all these expenses, it all adds up kasi every week you have to do it, you have to do your long ride. Tapos, like, basically, wala pa kasing masyadong information available about indoor training. Hindi pa siya ganun kauso. I had a trainer pero I hated it. Diba? Pero, you know, let me just share with you a story how I got into indoor training. So
Sige, bro.
I was training for my first full. I was always going to Clark. Pero when I was training for my second one, I realized it wasn't sustainable anymore. So why? Why wasn't it sustainable? Kasi nung first one, may grupo akong kasama. We were doing Ironman China, but it got canceled. So most of us moved to Ironman Korea. So yan, may solid group ako na kasama. We had the Tri-Clark boys, kaya ako lagi nagbabike sa Clark. May training partners ako doon na, really would show me around, not just Clark, pero yung O'Donnell, sa Tarlac, etc. So they had a very, very nice training ground there. But sa Quezon City, syempre wala nun. Tapos son, apart from that, syempre, I thought to myself, okay, I'm training for another Ironman. I wanted to cut down on my expenses kasi I was still teaching then, fresh grad, hindi pa ako masyado, syempre wala tayong malaking budget. And what I realized was, since I was training for my second full, which was Timex 226 in Bohol, hindi na ganun karami yung nagjo-join. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, sa start list, we were around 100 or maybe less than 100. So syempre, ang hirap maghagilap. Magyaya ako ng long ride. O, tara, long ride tayo. Tapos tinanong ako how long? Sabihin ko 140. So syempre walang sasama sa akin nun kasi yung long ride for a 70.3 would be around 70 to 80k or maybe up until 90 to 100, diba? So it was very difficult for me. To the point that sobrang tigas ng ulo ko, I would bike alone from UP Diliman, up until I reached yung mga Bugarin, pero I reached up until Caliraya, Quezon. So when you ride that course, actually you'll go through, dadaan kang, syempre, Manila, Rizal, Quezon, tapos so basically you're traversing, or even up until Laguna, so you're basically traversing like 3 provinces or 3 areas in a single ride. Pero yun nga, since I was doing it on my own, I realized that, this isn't too safe. If I figure in an accident along the way, sino kasama ko that will take care of me? Pangalawa pa, inisip ko kung mag-crash ako at kailangan ako dalhin sa ospital, sino magdadala ng bike ko? All these concerns, syempre at that time for me, parang hindi yan mangyayari sa'yo, ganon. Pero, as you matured, naki-realize mo yung reality of it all. Diba? How dangerous it is, especially kung wala kang sag or wala kang kasama. So I forced myself actually to embrace indoor training. And it wasn't really pleasant at first, but I ended up enjoying it, loving it, and now that's all that I do. I maybe bike maybe 90% of the time indoors, unless na lang may group ride talaga, let's say with the specialized boys or with some of my athletes for a big event, ganon. So that's the one of the few times that I really make time to go out. Ikaw ba, Ben, like, how did you decide to go into indoor training?
Well, when I started 2016, indoor training was a thing already eh. Parang nangyari, naging mix kasi ako ng outdoor and indoor, mainly because syempre I have work. I can't like squeeze in the weekday rides. So parang nangyayari, I go out for my rides in the weekends. Tapos during the weekday, to squeeze in yung dalawang extra spin sessions, sinubukan kong lumabas, like momowa ako, pero
Oh,
hindi ganun ka convenient with the traffic on a weekday. So
exactly.
I resorted to indoor training. Pero during that time, I must confess na ayaw ko talaga ng indoor kasi nakakabato eh. I guess that's one major complaint ng mga triathletes, especially those who are new to indoor training. I I would say I fell in love to indoor training when I did my first full distance Ironman Philippines. So kasi I guess na-relate ako sa kwento mo kanina. In our group kasi I was the first one to advance to full distance. Pag magyayaya ako ng long ride, like if it's over 100, 120, 140, 150, parang ikaw na bala sa buhay mo. Parang ikaw na mag-isa ka, di ba? So, much as I want syempre, I tried looking for other training groups. Ako naman ako ibang training groups. Pero syempre, there would still be instances na very impractical na to go out. Especially parang still need to balance my time between syempre training, the business, and family. Ano pag, 'di ba, kapag full distance, yung demand ng training, parang yung daughter ko at that time nagrereklamo, mas madalas ka pa mag-training kaysa mag-eat out tayo. So, syempre kapag to balance it out, there are certain training weekends that I scheduled it as an indoor training session. Yun. So, a lot of advantages. Last year when I hindi natuloy na gurye, 'di ba? Ang na-realize ko kapag kakarera ka pala ng third quarter, tag-ulan pala yung training season na yon. So, majority of my long rides talaga indoor. Indoor at Netflix.
Actually,
Combo.
swerte pa nga tayo ngayon. Isipin mo, when I was doing my full Ironman, medyo, nag-informal retirement na ako sa full Ironman just because for me, parang yung priority ko right now is coaching. Tapos, kung laspag na ako sa training, siyempre, ang hirap na for me to balance it. So, I have sobrang mad respect talaga for all my athletes who go out and do the full Ironmans. Like special shout out, like for example, someone that's watching us right now, si Manny the Monster Mondero. So ito talaga, sobrang tibay nito sa full Ironman, and he's actually qualified for Kona through the Legacy program. And
Okay.
he knows how important like indoor training is, especially during this time. So going back to the event that I was preparing for. So syempre, tulad ng sinabi mo, ang hirap, third quarter, fourth quarter, puro ulan na. At ayun ang usually nangyayari dyan, pagising mo sa umaga, titingin ka muna sa bintana, sabi mo, ay, pwede ba mag-bike? Mukhang tumigil na. Tapos pagdating mo doon, bubuhos, di ba?
Mm-hmm.
So, in a nutshell, it's so unpredictable. Like, a lot of people will say na, hindi, suck it up. Kung umulan, edi mag-ride ka pa rin. On race day naman, it's not gonna stop pag umuulan, 'di ba? They're not gonna you're not gonna have the last say whether you want to bike or run in the rain. But at the same time, sometimes it gets too dangerous. Like, syempre pag may bagyo or may baha, ako before nakakatawa nga, I went for a long ride in I think if I'm not mistaken, it was going to going to Naik again. Tapos sa sobrang baha dun sa certain parts of the road, to the point na kalahati halos ng wheel ko lubog na sa baha. And the thing is, may mga semplang kasi ako for like sa leg during that time. So natakot ako, yung pumasok sa isip ko baka ma-leptospirosis ako or what, all these little things. So syempre nakakapraning, especially when you're peaking for an event. Ayaw mo ma-cancel yung event mo dahil lang nagkasakit ka ng ganun, 'di ba? Not just leptospirosis, sipon, all these things, ganun. But yun nga, going back, it's very difficult if you're a slave to your environment. Kasi you will always have an excuse. It's too hot. It's too wet. Matraffic. Wala akong kasama. Ganon. So the nice thing about indoor training yun nga, is that your only excuse is yourself. Diba? Ayoko mag-bike. Wala kang madadahilan kundi, hindi, nandiyan na kasi yung bike ko. Siguro madadahilan mo na lang, aside from it being boring, kung nasira trainer mo, walang aircon, all these things. Pero again, there's always a workaround to these things as much as we want to, kumbaga our desire to bike will overpower these things. And believe it or not, during my time when I was starting my full Ironman journey, yun nga, walang Netflix. Pinaka siguro companion ko na nun were DVDs. Tapos YouTube wasn't that popular during that time. Wala pa ng mga longer videos and yung mga training videos wala pa sa YouTube. I'd end up buying stuff abroad, having it shipped here, and playing it siguro maybe 3 times a week, yung mga Sufferfest, all these other training videos, Carmichael training, etc. So for us to have these resources available to us now, sobrang swerte natin. And a lot of times, athletes overlook this. Like, what resources? Not just YouTube, not just Netflix. We also have Zwift, diba? Where we meet up.
Yep.
Now, kung ikaw ba, let's say, if you were to do a long ride, what would you rather maybe go through? Like, would you rather watch movies? Would you rather do it exclusively on Zwift? Or, are you lucky enough to do both at the same time?
Ako kapag it's like less than 2 hours, I stick with Zwift. Pero if it's like parang umaabot na 3 hours, I mix it up eh. Kasi minsan nakaka-bore na rin kapag puro Zwift ka. Let's say kung sobrang haba ng ride mo. Kung let's say mag 150 kilometer ride ka, tapos puro Zwift, I get bored. So sometimes I mix it up with Netflix, tapos mag-Zwift ako, tapos back to Netflix again. That's how I do it. Pero kapag short rides, Zwift ako all the way.
So yung nga, so we're lucky enough to have these things available to us. Ako, personally, I do both. I am on Zwift and at the same time I watch YouTube. So bakit YouTube and not Netflix? Kasi minsan pagpagod ka na yung attention span mo maiksi na eh. So ako parang, it's like, kunwari ko long movie, dati Lord of the Rings. Siguro, midway into the ride, nag-zone out ako for 15 minutes. Tapos biglang, ano ulit nangyari? So, balikan. So yung favorite ko nga panoorin before YouTube was actually yung mga recording ng Saturday Night Live. Kasi kung makalimutan mo yung last 5 minutes na nangyari, parang reset na lang ako, di ba? So these are a few tips that you could take advantage of whenever you do indoor training. But when you talk about indoor training specifically, I would tell you it's 90% perspective or 90% attitude about about riding indoors. What do I mean? Kung hindi nagbago yung perception natin na I hate indoor training, hindi talaga yun magbabago unless you change your mindset. So what do I mean change my mindset? Going back to my hate and then my love for indoor training, what were the factors that contributed to my sudden change of heart? Well, the first one is na-compute ko, ang laki na natipid ko. Pwede masabihin na, mahal ang bike trainer or what, but we're gonna discuss several options later on. It doesn't have to be expensive, it doesn't have to be a smart trainer. I started with a basic dumb trainer, then I saw the value of upgrading to a fluid trainer. And, my fluid trainer has been with me for ilang years na ba? Maybe 8, I think it's around 2012 eh. So, around 8 years already and it's still working, believe it or not. Kalakalawang na siya pero gumagana pa siya. Now, apart from that, the thing that you could change about indoor training, not just is yung appreciating the savings that you have. You get to save on toll, on gas, on expenses of food. Yung pinaka-importante are the time savings. So, I always say that time is the only commodity that you can neither replace nor multiply. No matter how rich you are, you only have 24 hours in a day. And no matter how much money you have, you can never replace the time you lost. So,
Correct.
tulad ng ako dati, I tried before, all the way from QC, sasama ako sa friends ko magbike sa MOA and back. Mas matagal pa yung travel time ko kesa sa ride ko. So, ang hirap. Tapos, apart from that, yung yung pagod eh. Kasi pagod ka na magbike, pagod ka pa mag-drive pa uwi. Sobrang traffic, especially during a weekday, 'di ba? So pag uwi mo, you're basically useless for another hour or so kasi kailangan mo mag-nap or whatever, 'di ba? And apart from that, siguro yung pinaka-importante that you could that will change your outlook about indoor training is to think how efficient it is. Are you familiar with training peaks? Di ba meron tayong tinatawag na training stress score?
Yes.
So training stress score, for most of the people who don't know, to simplify it, it's just how long and how hard you bike, and it's quantified into a single value. So you can either bike short at a high intensity or bike low at a long intensity. Now, if you compare indoor training with that of outdoor training, mas mataas ang training stress score for the same duration. Ibig sabihin, mas intense at mas may load ang training session mo for the same amount of time.
Okay.
Why is this the case? Kasi, di ba pag indoor training, tuloy-tuloy kang pumepedal. You're not stopping. Compare that if you're riding outdoors, marami kang free wheel, hindi ka makabuelo minsan, and it's very, very hard to maintain a given effort. Like, for example, yung ibang sets na binibigay ko sa'yo would be, kunyari, 20 minutes at zone 2 or zone 3.
Mm-hmm.
Ang hirap maghanap ng 20 minutes na
pag sa outdoor, no?
Oo, di ba?
Oo.
20 minutes pa lang yun. So the longest I could get would maybe 5 to 10 minutes. Continuous pedaling na hindi ka kailangan mag-slow down or mag-stop, not even for humps, not even for intersections, which of course is highly recommended in riding in the Philippines, di ba? So the quality of training is a lot better. Case in point, if you're biking for maybe an hour indoors, that would be equivalent to maybe an hour 20 minutes or an hour and a half outdoors. So you not just save on time, sa travel time, you also save time in terms of training. And apart from that, kasi yung hirap kasi when we do long rides outside, hintayan di ba? Meron kang kunwari teammate na hindi ganun kagaling or hindi ganun kabilis. Tapos nakakaawa naman tulad na nangyari sa akin before na kung iwan nila ako, syempre maliligaw ako. So your weakest link, quote unquote, is the main determinant of the duration of the ride. Diba? Kahit napukpukin mo yung ride, you would end up having to wait for some people. In fact, yung iba gagawin ko before, nung medyo mas malakas na ako at samahan ko yung iba kong teammate na or friends na mas mahina. Pagdating sa turnaround point, babalikan ko sila. So, ride ulit ako pabalik. So, parang nag-yo-yo ka. That's the best way to work around it. But at the same time, nothing beats indoor training when it comes to efficiency. Yes, it's not a substitute per se for outdoor riding. You would still need some outdoor riding, especially for handling. All these little quirks such as drinking or using your aero bars, ganon. But ako, to be honest, the only time I ride out before a race, even if it's a big one, would be the day before. Kasi you never forget how to ride the bike. At least this is for me, the long time I've been riding. You never forget how to ride the bike. So yung sandaling duration that you have to spend to familiarize yourself again with the bike, to build up some confidence, you only need a few sessions for that. Even for a half Ironman or even a full. Yun nga lang, syempre, if you're doing a full, you want to cover all the bases in the sense na, syempre, iba yung position mo pa rin sometimes indoor, pa rin outdoor. So it's a mix, I would say, for most people. Okay. Special case ako, I would like to point out na I could basically ride exclusively indoors and not have a problem. Swerte ka if you can do that like me. Sometimes confidence rin lang.
Question dun. So, we've discussed the obvious advantages of indoor training, like syempre cost savings, saving on time, which is cost din also, di ba? We've discussed safety, and you mentioned about the not so obvious most of the time na advantages, which is yung training gains, training efficiency. How about let's say disadvantages of indoor training? Are there any kumbaga disadvantages ba that you would say na can be highlighted?
Well, yung isang concern dyan is heat training, di ba? So sabihin na iba, hindi, pag indoor training ka, you won't be acclimatized to the heat.
Okay,
Which is
okay.
partly true.
Mm-hmm.
So yung ginagawa ng ibang tao, they turn off the aircon, turn off the fan, tapos papakihirap sila sa init.
Okay.
Now, that's not such a good thing if you do it all the time. Why? Kasi the point of training is for you to repeatedly perform at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, if you're dehydrated, if under heat stress ka, yung body mo sometimes won't adapt quickly enough to the point na lahat ng ride mo nagiging junk.
Mm-hmm.
Diba? Kasi naspag ka no matter how well trained you are, kung dehydrated ka, your body will always suffer. So pwede mo sabihin, sige, inom ka lang na inom ng tubig. Pero if you're riding indoors kasi, walang wind factor that helps with cooling.
Mm-hmm.
So yung advice ko for everyone who does indoor training is to make sure that you have a fan at least, and you can actually take advantage of using your aircon.
Mm-hmm.
It won't make you weaker once you ride out. Why? Kasi when you're riding outdoors naman, a lot of times naman, especially pag mabilis ang takbo mo, hindi mo naman nararamdaman yung init per se, di ba? Kasi you're cooled by the wind. And apart from that, if you want to acclimatize yourself for the heat, or let's say for hot conditions, you don't have to do it all the time. You just have to have several weeks preparation for that. And it doesn't have to be every ride. So yun yung ginagawa nga nila acclimatization. Ako, rule of thumb ko will be 2 to 3 weeks before we already start heat training or introducing heat training into the training regimen. So dito na pumapasok yung riding outdoors in the heat, or yun nga, if you can't ride outdoors, yung medyo mas mainit na conditions whenever you train. So that's one possible downside to indoor training. Yun nga, if you don't know how to acclimatize properly to the heat. And again, going back, you don't have to do it all the time. What I do for my athletes is gradual acclimatization. So sa simula, sanay na sanay ka puro indoor training, malamig, tapos eventually you transition towards getting used to hotter conditions. Now, another downside I would say would be handling. Siyempre, pag indoor training, hindi ka naman kailangan mag-balance eh. Kahit kumain ka, kahit uminom ka or whatever, kahit anong gawin mo, nandun pa rin yung bike mo, except if you're using rollers, obviously. So that's a possible downside. But at the same time, like what I said, before the race, meron ka familiarization sessions to get used to handling, to get used to, all the techniques that you need to do, like drinking, refilling your water bottle, etc. On top of that, I guess the best solution, if this is a concern for you, will be to maybe do outdoor training once a week or maybe once every 2 weeks. And then the rest of the rides will be indoor. So that solves the problem of heat acclimatization and yung handling part. Maybe the final downside to indoor training is you're secluded. Diba? Yung iba kasi, the reason why you ride out is because of camaraderie, the kwentuhan, etc. Iba rin yung bond. Ako, I have a lot of very close friends na kahit hindi ko nakikita for the longest time kasi nag-lay low na sa triathlon or what, pag nakakausap ko ulit ngayon, talagang nagbabalikan kami. Naalala mo yung ride natin na gano'n? So, iba rin yung bond and yung camaraderie nangyari. But, again, you don't have to ride all the time outdoors to be able to enjoy all these things. Lucky enough nga, ngayon may Zoom na rin tayo, wherein your group can ride on the trainer and you zoom at the same time. Siyempre, hindi pareho ang kwentuhan, pero at least nandun pa rin.
Oh. Tsaka, etong times na to, like me, although technically pwede natin lumabas at mag-ride out, di ba? Pero ako, ayoko pa rin lumabas eh. I'd rather stay home. So, I don't have any training options but to train indoors. Di ba?
Yung
So,
sa,
dun sa love-hate relationship ko sa indoor training, nandun ako sa love stage.
Oo. Pareho tayo eh kasi ako like, again, I have a baby, I have my senior parents. So for me to go out, syempre may risk pa rin eh. Even if let's say cycling outdoors is relatively safe, sometimes it's the, the refilling your water bottle, or bringing down your mask to drink. So syempre minsan nakakapraning, especially if you're like us that have like immunocompromised people within the household. On top of that, tinatakot ko, let's say, kunwari kung may mangyari sa akin, ma-aksidente ako, and I need to be brought to the hospital during this time. Nakakatakot kasi for one, ayoko nang yung asawa ko magdadalhin ako sa ospital, siya yung mag-aalaga sa akin, ma-expose pa siya or yung anak ko or yung parents ko or whatever. So all these things, if I can maybe do away with it,
Yeah.
then I gladly do away with it now.
Yeah.
So again, it's it really depends on the person. If you really like riding outdoors during this time, then it's okay.
Correct.
But for the people who really want to learn how to train indoors and take advantage of it, we're here to help. Maybe we could start with the gear that we are here prepared to show you. This isn't really like a home TV shopping network channel, but we're just here to show you options about the different models, not even models, but the kinds that you could purchase so you could get started on your indoor training journey.
De,
Okay, so
tsaka doon, ano rin eh, whenever you talk about indoor training, gear is normally the most commonly asked question eh. Like, what gear do I use? What equipment do I use for indoor training?
yeah, that's true. That's true. So, yun nga, at least now we can go through the different range of options that we do have. So maybe we could just give me the go signal if you have we prepared some
Sige.
slides
Oo,
for
go.
you.
Let's start with siguro the entry entry level na equipment.
This is what I started with. So I started with a cheap Menura bike, which I borrowed from Edmond of Altera. Actually, mali ko pa nga dyan, pinahiram niya lang sa akin. Tapos a lot of things happen, Ondoy happened, etc. Alimutan ko ibalik. So, thank you Edmond and sorry hindi ko yung nabalik for a few months. Pero malaking tulong talaga sa akin yung indoor trainer ko na yan, the Menura. There are a lot of other models available, pero Menura is the most prevalent and the most common. And actually, I'd say very durable. Value for money. So it's roughly around 5K to get started with an indoor trainer. And if you want to get on Zwift, it's not that expensive if you want an entry point. So you just have to buy a speed or a cadence, a speed or a speed and cadence sensor, which is around 2K to maybe 5K depending on what model you get. And that's actually enough to get you on Zwift. The downside to this is because it's a dumb trainer, you won't have any feedback when you bike. So kunwari may uphill, hindi mo mararamdaman. Which isn't necessarily bad in itself. Kasi sometimes, to be honest, I like to turn off the feedback sa smart trainer ko. Especially when I do my long interval sets. Kasi ayoko na ma-hassle ng having to shift. So it really depends on the workout session that you have planned out. So that's all you need. I'd say if you have a bike, and you want to start with your indoor training, you could start here. Okay?
Alright.
The next option we have will be the intermediate option. So the intermediate option naman, dito na medyo nagiging confusing. Kasi dumadami na yung options mo. Okay? So the price range I put there will be around 35K to maybe 55K. Pero there are models below this. Yun nga lang, it's not so common. So the most common will be around the 35K range. So there are basically two types of trainers at this point already. So the wheel on, which is like the Minura, and the direct drive, which is like the model there, which I pointed out, the Flux. Now, So let's discuss the difference between the two. Okay, ano ba yung trainer mo, Ben?
Ano ko, naka-wheel on ako. Tax na Vortex, Smart Vortex. Yung entry level na na smart. Parang
So
phase out na nga yata ngayon yun eh. Parang wala
yeah,
na ako nakikita.
yeah, it hasn't been brought in. I'm not exactly sure if it's been phased out. Pero the problem with wheel on is that nalalaspag ang tires mo. That's the first thing that people
Yes.
remember.
Oo, kaya may spare ako na rear wheel just for the trainer eh.
The trainer, na may
Mm-mm.
trainer tire, di ba? So the nice
Yes.
thing about the trainer tire is hindi siya napupudpod as
Yep.
quickly as
Yep.
having a bike. Apart from that, kasi if you use the bike that you use to ride outdoors, ano siya yun, parang siya napapolish, kumikinis siya. So
Uh-huh.
the downside to that is medyo mas madulas siya
Yep.
compared to having a bike that you don't use on the trainer.
Yep.
So again, that's I guess a thing that you could consider whenever you have a wheel on. Apart from that, the problem there is the accuracy. Wheel on trainer will not be as accurate because of a few things such as tire pressure, the contact between the trainer tire and the mechanism itself. So kailangan mo dito ng constant calibration, and even with constant calibration, it won't be as accurate as a direct drive, because as you progress with the ride, pag umiinit yung tire, to some extent it loses a little bit of pressure or lumuluwag yung resistance. So nagbabago rin yung readings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The upside to it is that it's very convenient. Mas madali siya ikabit kasi kakapapalitan mo lang yung skewer. Iba nga hindi na nagpapalit ng skewer, pero guys, need to remember, replace your indoor trainer skewer if you're gonna ride outdoors kasi it doesn't hold a secure clamp on your wheel. Isang pitik mo dyan sa lever, matatanggal siya. And I've seen it happen somewhat before. So remember to use your
Ala,
outdoor skewer
delikado.
if you're gonna ride out. And wag kayo tamarin kasi skewer lang yung mabilis lang yan. So, yun nga, convenience. And at the same time, the nice thing about it is that if you have several bikes at home, hindi na ganun kahirap to swap it in and out. So, I'm gonna have an example later on with the direct drive. So, for example, siguro pinaka-basic example, if you have an 11-speed bike, at let's say yun sa asawa mo, let's say 10-speed, you can use the same trainer. Diba? All you have to do is replace the skewer. Now, moving forward naman, the slightly more expensive option will be the direct drive. So pag sinabi mo direct drive, wala na siyang rear wheel. And the nice thing about not having a rear wheel is that, for one, it's a lot quieter. Hindi siya kasing ingay ng wheel-on trainer. And apart from that, there's less wear and tear. When you talk about wear and tear dyan, yung wear and tear sa wheel. Ako, believe it or not, even just last year, I was using a wheel-on trainer, the Kicker Snap. It's not the high end, pero even for someone like me, it's actually pretty good enough, especially since I kept using, especially since I kept using the trainer, diba? So I really saw the quality of having the mid-range units. Hindi ka na minsan mabibitin eh. Now, the reason why I upgraded to direct drive is because I had ceramic bearings on my hub. At sayang, 'di ba?
Mm-hmm.
Mahal ng bearings na 'yan, mahal ng tires, naka-aero wheels ka, tapos malalaspag lang siya sa trainer. So I got the direct drive, and the thing that I liked about it is that not only is it mas maganda yung feel niya, especially if you're riding Zwift, mas responsive, especially for the higher end models. You don't really have to worry about the wear and tear except on the chain. So, syempre, may wear and tear pa rin yan, pero sa chain na. Now, siguro, a quick tip lang is that even if you're on the indoor trainer, you still need to take care of your chain by cleaning it
Mm-hmm.
and properly lubing it. If you don't clean it, if you don't properly lube it, mas madali siyang malaspag. Mas madali siyang mag-stretch, potentially, mas mabilis yung lifespan niya. Alright? So, maybe sa future sessions natin, we could show a little bit of a few hacks on how you can take care of your chain. But for now, for the indoor trainer naman, the downside to direct drive is it tends to be a little bit more finicky kasi mas mahirap ikabit yung bike mo eh. 'Di ba?
Mhm.
Ang hirap na magkabit ng rear wheel. I have a lot of friends that still have trouble removing the rear wheel. Even if may technique kasi yan eh. Like you have to put it in the smallest cog, etc. You have to make sure that may slack yung chain. But even if you do that, yung pagkabit ng bike mo sa direct drive trainer tends to be a little bit more cumbersome and more difficult. But, if you're gonna leave it there at hindi mo siya kailangan tanggalin, it's a set it and forget it thing. The problem is, if you're gonna remove your bike from the trainer and put on the rear wheel, madalas yung space, yung distance or offset ng cogs mo on the trainer and on your rear wheel will be different. So, ang dami nagrereklamo na, pag kinabit ko yung bike ko sa direct drive, nagsiskip yung gears ko, and vice versa. It's because yung no two wheels are the same. If you put in one wheel from another brand on your bike, madalas may offset yan. So, you need to retune it. At ganun rin yun sa direct drive. The workaround is if you have a very good mechanic, pwede ka magpatulong such that he can put very small spacers either on the direct drive trainer or on your existing wheel para magpantay sila. Such that when you put it on and remove it and put on your rear wheel, hindi mo na kailangan itono ulit. So yung master mechanic for me who does this to precision talaga would be Sir Egay Santiago. Siya yung mechanic rin ng a lot of my athletes. So he really puts a lot of attention in doing these things. Of course, other mechanics can do it. You just have to instruct them. Pero iba rin kasi pag sanay na yung gagawa.
Okay.
Even if I use my race wheel set and remove or use my trainer, wala nang adjustment sa fine tuning.
Oh.
Siguro the other problem with the direct drive, I would say, is it tends to be a little bit more bulky than the foldable ones, the wheel-on ones. So if you're gonna store it, it tends to be a little bit more space-consuming. So,
Question regarding do sa tuning ng direct drive, how often should you have it tuned?
actually, you don't have to have it tuned at all if you tune it once. Pero the problem is if you swap out wheel sets all the time, then you would need to tune it every time you swap it out.
Okay.
Which is very difficult for a lot of people. Ako kasi, I'm lucky enough to have DI2. So the tuning process will be easier. But at the same time, it's still gonna take some time. At minsan, akala mo okay na eh. Pero pag ride mo sa labas, biglang magsiskip. So you don't want that to happen during your long ride, especially during a race. So yun.
Okay.
Now, siguro we could transition to the high-end part.
High-end na. Okay. Para sa mga malalim ang bulsa.
So, ito talaga, when people ask me who should get a high-end setup, it really depends on you. I'm not saying that the more advanced or the more elite you are, the more expensive trainer you should get. Like what I said, I went with a cheap trainer and an intermediate trainer for the longest time. Pero yung high-end trainer talaga, if you just want to have fun and appreciate the quality of equipment that you do have. So the best option would be, although I'm lucky enough to have this setup at home, so the kicker and the climb. So the nice thing about this is that it actually simulates gradient on Zwift. So if you're climbing uphill or you're going downhill, tataas at bababa siya. Does it feel exactly like how it would feel if you're riding outdoors? Well, not really, but it's close enough for me. Kasi if you're riding, let's say uphill, ibang muscle group pa rin yung ginagamit mo because of your position on the bike. Siyempre, you have to move a little bit forward if you're climbing. Tapos yung engagement ng quads mo and your calves tend to be a little bit different. So I find that this has been close enough to simulate my hill intervals or my hill work. On top of that, meron pa tayong isang option, so the Neo, the Tax Neo. So I'm giving out these two examples just because not because I carry these models, but only because these are the two models that I have pretty good experience with that I could really um, be confident talking about. So the Neo naman, it doesn't have the climb option. Um, the thing about the climb pala, it's not compatible with other bike trainers. So it's only compatible if you use a Wahoo trainer. So that
Okay.
closes the door for a lot of other options like mixing and matching. But the nice thing about the Neo, even if it doesn't have the climb, is it has feedback. So alam mo 'di ba kunwari nung nagpe-PlayStation tayo, meron vibration, 'di ba dual shock ganun. So may vibration na nararamdaman mo whenever you do let's say a particular uh, task or command or whatever. So ganun rin actually with the Neo. If you ride on cobbles, may certain vibrations that would pretty much simulate riding on rough terrain. So may marami pang ang option that you could use using the app, like it would simulate certain types of terrain. And nakakaaliw lang kasi we now have the technology for all of these things. So which one do you want to choose? The WoW or the Neo? It really depends on you. I wouldn't say that one is a deal breaker over the other.
Mm-hmm.
It really depends on one, how much you're willing to
Preference, no?
spend, and two, yung siguro the apps that you want to use it for. Like if you
Oh.
want to use the Wahoo app, which I personally love, then you could go with the Wahoo. The tax is pretty close and pretty much the same, so you could do that as well. The nice thing about these is all of these models are compatible with Zwift,
Mm-mm.
which is I guess the go-to app right now for a lot of people.
Don't question. Sa comparing Tax Neo, which is yung high-end na direct drive compared to the mid-range na model ng Tax, which is anong model nga ba yun? Yung nasa intermediate na
The Flux.
Flux, okay. So what are the key differences aside from the feedback that you mentioned?
Well, yung pinaka-difference kasi from going from an intermediate to a high-end one, I would say would be the motor. So, three things specifically. One is how strong the motor is.
Okay.
So, I have a lot of inquiries asking, hanggang ano yung max wattage niyan? 1,200 din. So, totoo lang ako, even at my ability, hindi ako nabibitin sa intermediate.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since, as triathletes, we don't really do, let's say, all-out sprinting as much as pure road cyclists, di ba? So if you're a triathlete, usually steady state, or if ever mga up until VO2 max, to be honest, di ako nabibitan when it comes to that. The second one will be accuracy. So
Okay.
how accurate your power meter is. Usually, kunwari pag wheel on, that's around 3%. It's a pretty good number already, 3 to 5% usually pag wheel on. Pag may intermediate direct drive, that will be around maybe 2 to 3%, maybe up until 1.5% for some models. For the high-end ones naman, this is where the 1%, yung bagong labas ng Wahoo na kicker, I think it's around 1% accuracy already. So the readings will be very, very nice. Siguro I should point out rin that accuracy doesn't always mean that the readings are right. It basically means that the readings are a little bit more consistent. Kasi it can be accurate, pero yung sometimes yung accuracy niya, it depends on how it's calibrated by the particular company. So those are the concerns that they have. The third one would be yung calibration. Intermediate trainers, they would usually go through what's called a spin down. So a spin down will be to zero the resistance curve of the trainers. You have to bike up to a certain speed, stop pedaling, and then it will coast on its own. At dun makikita yung resistance ng trainer. If you have the high-end ones, it's auto-calibrating or self-calibrating. So as you're riding, it's constantly calibrating. So that's better because you don't have to do the spin down every single time or at all even. And the nice thing about it is that if you have the higher-end, I don't know if it's nice for some people, pero basically the reason why they also did away with the the manual calibration is to I guess police some cheating. Kasi may pwede madayain eh. Yung spin down, kunwari gusto mo mas mataas watts mo, may pwede kang gawin. Ako personally, I don't know what specifically you need to do, but I would assume you have to manipulate the resistance that the trainer sees. So with auto calibration, that's thrown out of the window. Which is of course a concern right now kasi lahat ng career natin indoor. So kita mo iba parang yung napopulis na ng Zwift kasi steady state nagba 500 watts tapos yung Zwift na mismo yung huli sa kanya showing na may inaccurate readings ka so it might be a trainer problem or something. Meron. Oh, yun. Mm-mm. It's not, I'm not saying it's intentional. A lot of times it's a problem with the equipment eh. So yun yung yun yung concern right now. All right? So siguro so we discussed the range, 'di ba? Uh, Entry level to high end. Siguro later on baka may mas mahal pa diyan aside from the let's say the kicker bike and the tax bike, the mas stages bike, yung it's an entire bike already. That's something that you could it's not syempre it's not the same as how using your own bike kasi may mga changes that sa Q factor which is the width of the pedals or even the as much as we try to replicate it hindi kasing precise yung adjustments that you could do on these bikes pero the nice thing about it is that if you want a single bike for their entire family regardless of height or let's say ability then it's a pretty good option that you could do have. Okay, so the other things that we could discuss at this point will be the accessories that we could have. Siguro bilisan na lang natin when it comes to this, no?
Okay.
So yung we have the headwind which is just a fancy fan. You have this yung Stiro which is a product by Elite which I'm pretty sure other companies will come out with na. Kasi pwede na may steering sa Zwift. So you could use your handlebars to steer your bike and even control your avatar. So ginagawa na to sa let's say sa trail or maybe sa drafting sa pack you could use your stero to control your character. So other options there would be yung all these other gadgets that you could include such as maybe an upgrade option that I would recommend would be to get a heart rate monitor. The nice thing about having a heart rate monitor is that you get to see your input and your output. Diba? Kasi as you improve, ang mangyayari, it's either you produce more watts or your heart rate goes lower. So for you to understand that, maganda if you have a heart rate monitor to see the improvement that you do have. So this is a sign that you're improving in terms of your fitness level. Okay? So meron na rin tayong mga options dyan yung tinatawag nilang mga rocker plate. So it gives a little of side-to-side play for your bike to some extent simulate what you would feel if you're riding outdoors. Of course, it's not still the same. And a lot of other trainers, like the new kicker right now, will already have this built in. But if you don't have the new kicker yet, which is just still arriving next month, then rocker plate or yung platform will be a pretty good option. The problem with it lang is that if you're doing your trainer sessions in the living room, ang hirap niya itago. So, kailangan mo ipaalam, kailangan mo ng visa to be able to get that huge thing in your living room. Okay? So, so I guess these are the options for the bike. Siguro we'll go, since this is an indoor training live stream session, maganda we get to discuss the other ways you can train indoors. So the next thing would be to run indoors. So Zwift running is free. Unlike the cycling version, you don't have to pay a monthly fee to appreciate it. So how do you get into the indoor running scene? Of course, you need a treadmill. So if you do have a treadmill, the next thing that you would need is either a running part or a heart rate compatible heart rate monitor. Or sometimes your watch, like the newer Garmin models, they can actually broadcast your speed via Bluetooth to your phone or tablet or laptop. Okay? So, maraming options sa pod pero the two I'm familiar with will be the Milestone pod / the Zwift pod, which is the cheapest option. Then we have the Stride running power meter. So the difference between the two, I find, is that the Zwift pod is pretty good for indoor training, but doesn't really do much for running outdoors. You know, all it does is tell you speed, which is something that you could use if you run it, let's say in BGC or Makati na nagda-drop yung GPS signal. Now, the nice thing about the Stride running power meter naman is that you have a lot more information in the form of wattage. So, if, like the same way that we have wattage on the bike, we also have wattage on the run available to us for the past couple of years or few years already. Now, the nice thing about this using the Stride, even if it's a lot more expensive, it's justified because the wattage that you get to train indoors will be something that you can replicate outdoors, unlike speed. Sometimes because speed can be difficult. If you run at 5-minute pace, let's say sa watch mo indoors, it won't be the same outdoors kasi indoors, what your watch uses is your arm swing. Outdoors, what your watch uses is GPS, which is more accurate. So arm swing does not necessarily equate to a certain speed. Okay? Unlike if you have a running power meter, it's a little bit more consistent and more accurate. Meron rin tayo like the upcoming Ticker X, which is coming next month. It can not only measure heart rate but also estimate speed. Of course, this is not as accurate as using a running pod, but at the same time, it's a good entry point towards indoor training using Zwift. If you don't have a treadmill yet and you want to invest with them, there are a lot of Zwift compatible treadmills across a lot of you know price ranges. Meron tayo as cheap as maybe 24K, meron tayo na sa mga 30K, and it can go up until 80 to close to 100K depending on the model and the brand that you do get. So the nice thing about having a treadmill is that whatever speed you put in, it automatically sends it to your phone or your tablet and controls your character on Zwift. Kumbaga less interface when it comes to you running on the treadmill. Okay, so of course, not a lot of people have been using this yet for obvious reasons kasi mahal rin ang treadmill. Not everyone has space for a treadmill, but for those who do want, then it's an available option. Now, I guess the final thing that we could talk about when it comes to indoor training is something if you don't have a bike, if you don't have space for a treadmill, then the next best thing would be to do strength and conditioning indoors. If you don't have space, marami tayong option right now, such as adjustable dumbbells and adjustable kettlebells. I personally use an adjustable kettlebell here. So you just need one device and pwede mo i-select yung weight that you need. So kung kailangan mo mabigat or magaan, you just need one set. Same thing for the dumbbell. If you don't have enough space, then you could use resistance bands. Maraming videos on YouTube showing you how to use them. We also have the suspension trainers such as the TRX, which is pretty useful especially you want to work on your back. Kasi madali mag-train indoors, let's say, for the pushing motion like chest. You just have to do push-ups, dumbbells for your shoulders, etc. But when it comes to the pulling motion, it becomes a little bit more difficult if you don't have the heavy dumbbells for your rows. Then the TRX will actually be a pretty good option because you get to do your lat pull down and your low rows easier. If you are strong enough to pull up your own body weight, then you could buy a pull-up bar which attaches to your door sill. So it uses depending on where you hold it, because it actually clamps into the frame of your door without supposedly damaging it. Pero syempre, depende na lang sa klase ng pull-up bar and sa klase ng door mo or door sill. So it adds tension, allowing you to do your pull-ups. If you don't get to pull up yet, another hack that you could do is use a loop band, yung rubber band na malalaki. Tie it sa pull-up bar mo, put your 1 or 2 feet on it, such that medyo assisted yung pull-up mo. Now, for all these sessions, actually, the main resource that you could get would either be let's say, for example, the YouTube videos showing different kinds of exercises, not just using equipment, but also body weight exercises. Meron na tayo mga Nike Fit app, etc. So we have a lot of resources when it comes to these. Okay. So I guess that wraps up a product showcase, I would say, about the equipment that you would need. If there are, siguro we could open it up if there are any questions that you could
No.
on YouTube. Meron bang questions, guys, there? If wala at this point, you can just reach me
Oo.
and message me about it. Walang nagtatanong right now eh.
Wala. No question so far. Marami raw maraming convert na raw to indoor.
Si Ronnie yan. Si Ronnie sobrang swerte eh. When she bought her bike recently, which was a Liv Avao, nung pagkakita ko sa bike niya, sabi ko, may power meter ka na pala. Hindi alam. May power meter yan. Sigurado ako. So it was like a stages type of power meter. Sobrang sulit. Nabili niya yung bike na hindi niya alam may power meter pala. And now that's what we've been using for Zwift. Okay, so meron pa si Mabel na question. Nakita ko pinost niya to kanina eh. What cycling platforms can you recommend aside from Zwift? To be honest, I haven't had experience with Ruby, pero si Levi Ang has been using it and he has pretty good feedback when it comes to it. So Ruby is a pretty good option. Mas kumbaga ang Zwift kasi naging parang video game. Ruby is a little bit more realistic and it's actually what is used by Ironman Virtual Club for the Challenger division. If you want, parang mas mas policed na version siya ng Ironman VR. Then meron tayong RGT cycling which I personally haven't tried pero some people have been trying to use it pero I just haven't had enough feedback. Other options I would say would be things like, for example, Trainer Road, etc. But nothing beats kasi seeing your avatar move around and seeing the people. Kasi ako, even if I'm well motivated enough indoor training, iba rin yung drive na nakikita ko kapag, nakikita ko si Ben, 10 seconds ahead, abulin ko na to, tiisin na natin to, something like that. So, medyo mas napupush ka.
Yeah.
Yung competitiveness mo lumalabas.
Magandang I would say maganda yung social media component ni Zwift. Tsaka yung gamification niya. Maganda.
Yes, to. Yung parang challenge kasi na built the reason why we race rin kasi syempre gusto mo habulin, gusto mo manalo. So it takes advantage of that, di ba?
Yeah.
Unlike just seeing pure graphs or pure data. Ako, for someone like me, enough na yon, like that's enough motivation for me. Pero for a lot of people, iba yung nakikita mo yung ibang tao. And like for example, last week I joined we joined pala the 7 days of tarmac. And iba rin yung may nakikita ka ibang cyclists from abroad. Nakita mo, lalakas pala na itong mga
Yep.
Colombian or stuff, something like that. Mas interactive lang siya. And may mga naging IG friends na rin ako from events on Zwift that have, we follow each other. Nakita mo rin yung training nila abroad. So, yun.
Good. Sige, let's check kung meron mga pahabol na questions sa stream.
Si Al Santos, who is your favorite athlete? Sa totoo lang, si Mar Kagawan.
Si Chumar. Boss Mar, magandang gabi. Nanonood ba?
Si Al ang favorite ko.
Si Al, kulit to.
Nga eh.
Shout-out na lang tayo. Paul, si Al, Noel, Mabel, si Ronnie's here. Monching, of course.
Si Nikki malakas na mag-bike ngayon.
Sige. Na pala, 7:05. Medyo nag-extend tayo ng konti sa time, pero ang dami rin natin na cover, no? Pero Don, before siguro we end, baka you have any indoor training sessions that you want to invite everyone? Baka meron ka upcoming public session?
Yeah, actually, we've been planning. Actually, even before all this, with Specialized before, we were coming up with indoor training sessions, especially during the lockdown. But right now, they have training sessions or group rides supposedly to be scheduled pag okay na lahat. So, ngayon kasi syempre we're trying to minimize group training. Pero since wala pang ganon, I'm gonna take the lead and invite you guys to a few group rides on Zwift on Saturdays. Tomorrow pala may group run session si Maybell, 8 a.m. So if you want to join her run, just send her a message, follow her on Zwift and send her a message. But on top of that, I'm gonna announce the group rides that we will have maybe next week or next week. So this will be a 40K ride on Saturday. It's not a race, it's just a group ride.
Totoo yan
So
ha.
may mga race
Baka
kasi.
mabudol na naman ako ha.
Oh. Yeah, if you want to race on, let's say, on weekdays, sina Raul Cuevas of Biking have been holding trainer sessions or Zwift sessions every Tuesday. So, ini-invite ako kasi nga lang maaga for me. Medyo medyo puyat pa pag
Ayan, di isang maganda sa indoor training. Maski late ka mag-start. Di ba?
Totoo. Oo. Dati gigising ako 4 a.m. para maka-ride ako ng 6 a.m.
Oo, di ba?
Ngayon gigising ako ng 7 a.m. para maka-ride ako ng 7:15. Kaya yun. Okay, so siguro let's give a preview as to what our next topic will be in the next live stream session.
Yes,
so,
sige.
Hindi pa natin na-finalize,
Hindi
no?
hindi pa.
Oh,
What
pero
do you have in
it's
mind ba for next week?
something related to the mind of the athlete. So it's your motivation whenever you
Okay.
train and whenever you race. So how can you unleash or unlock these things? And siguro later on, what I do want to talk about then is managing stress and anxiety during this time. It's not exactly training related, but it's a tangent to exercise and wellness and training
Oh, yeah.
and all.
Oo.
So I think it's very relevant right
Yeah.
now. So we're gonna prepare for that session.
Yeah, it affects your your training motivation eh. So
Motivation, not just that, but it goes cyclical eh. Your mood will affect your training will affect your mood.
Yeah.
So, these are things that we want to be able to discuss, and
Sige.
I guess
Good, exciting topic for next week. Iano natin, promote natin early.
Train game.
Yeah, sige. Good.
All right.
So, we're done. We're done with episode number 2. Okay, mukhang weekly na talaga to. We're committed to do it weekly. So, alam na tayo. Sige. So,
yes,
guys,
so dinner time na.
dinner time na. Guys, thank you so much for again spending your Saturday night with us. This is Ben Francia, and of course, ang ating resident coach Don Velasco saying thank you so much and have a great Saturday night. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Bye.
See you guys.
See you.